On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
Yeah, that's how I've seen kind of the groups that I've been working with, the guys that I've been working with. They get so much on court stuff that when they come to me, it's really just like very minimal touching on some of that movement stuff, like making sure it looks really clean, mechanics are good. And then it's just kind of hammering the weight room stuff and getting the basics. And then you talked about some of the like the buffers that you're trying to work through, like what are those areas of concern or importance for you? Obviously, we know what the baseball world looks like with elbows, particularly and shoulders.
Right.
Like, what are you looking at with basketball guys?
Yeah, like feet, foot and ankles, the knees, the
Mm-hmm.
hips, and I would say more so just like the foot and ankle, taking care of like the soleus and the calf structure. With all this A cell, D cell, plant cut, redirect. I mean, we saw it this year, like three guys go down, with ruptures of the Achilles. So like it just goes to show you just how violent the sport actually is in nature. And then obviously like tendon health, right? So just making sure like from a like I like to think of it as NBA is more like lower extremity. Whereas baseball, you get a lot. I feel like baseball, you probably get a little bit of both. Like you get a bit lower, you get some upper, but predominantly upper with the pitchers and the throwing motions. So you'll see a lot more elbows and shoulders. Where basketball, you're going to see a lot more foot, ankle, calf, Achilles, knees, just because of the high A cell, D cell, and change of direction that happens on the court.
I've added in some shoulder stuff for our basketball guys, and they seem to really appreciate it. And I was just thinking about, I was like, how long their reach is, like to be able to stabilize the shoulders against, another big dude, or like you're trying to get a rebound, or even just like dunking, or like that's so much strain on their shoulders, or even like they're falling on the court all the time, right? They go up for a rebound, they get bumped, they land weird on the leg, they try to catch themselves on the hand and the shoulder. Like there's a lot of I have found in my brief time working with them is like there's a lot of value in working with that. And honestly, a lot of them are kind of weak up there as well, but it's not like my main priority. It's like you said in baseball, like obviously upper body is main priority, but there is some lower body stuff. Like the
Right.
basketball guys, that lower body is the main stuff, but there is still value to like getting that upper body stronger and more prepared for some of those like unexpected contacts as well, at least in the limited experience I have thus far.
Right, for sure. And I do think so, like, one of the things that we kind of talked about like early on when at my inception in the NBA was like, guys like during stretch, like, guys don't really like to do like arm stuff. But I'm like, I challenge that a little bit because I'm like, why? They're passing, they're dribbling, they're dunking. You know what I mean? Like they're still using their upper extremities. Not to mention they're going overhead quite a bit. If guys are getting to the rim, they're going overhead, right? Like so we channel, we like, with my NBA club, like we channel, doing shoulder work, making sure that the shoulders are strong, and then I think there is a little bit of an optics lens in the NBA, if, guys are wearing cut off sleeves, right? Like, the sleeves are off, sun's out, guns out, shoulders got to be popping, there's a physical presence to that. So, I'd err on the side. I know it's a little bit more of an accessory component, but I do think it's purposeful as well.
Oh yeah, we would do when our group was at our biggest, like we'd do, an arm pump on a Friday, and I'd be putting things away and I'd look over and they all have their shirts off, they're all flexing in the mirror and they're like, Coach, look how jacked I am. Look at my arms. I'm like, there's something to
Yeah,
that like,
yeah,
oh, look at me, big body, big body. I'm like, you
right,
are a big
right.
body, but also like, yeah. And then I'm like, I'm in here just grinding away to even look like regular. And you guys do like one set of curls and your pump is just like, because
Yeah,
they're all huge. They're all
right,
huge guys.
right.
And that's, kind of circling back on that other point is like, you talked about this earlier, right? You go to an NBA game in person versus watching on TV in particular, and you're like, this is just 10 grown dudes on the basketball court, and the court is not that big, and how big they are and how physical they are against each other. And then you don't really realize that until you stand next to a 7 footer. And I have like high school kids that are 7 feet tall, and I'm like, these guys haven't grown into themselves yet. So they're a lot of the times I feel like they're very uncoordinated in like basic movements. And then you give them a ball on the court and they're just like yamming all over each other. And I'm like, it's very interesting dynamic of just like, I don't think humans are supposed to be that big. You know what I mean? So when they are like, for me, I'm moving a certain amount in space when I squat, and then I look over in the 7 footer, and like the amount of, the amount that he has to do just to move through a basic squat pattern is infinitely larger than I do. And then it kind of puts into perspective, like, oh, I have to like take care of this stuff a little bit differently, at least in the experience I've had. It's been really good for me because, baseball, there's most guys are relatively within a bandwidth or a framework that they kind of fit in. And then basketball guys also are in a framework. That framework is just way different than baseball.
100%, man. And that's one of the things I realized right away when I got to the NBA is I'm no longer the tallest guy in the room at 6'5". Like, like our point guard and our shooting guard are my height, if not a little bit taller. So I'm like, all right, I'm like mediocre, I'm average in the NBA. Whereas in baseball, like you said, man, like you're either looking, most of the times you're looking face to face. If not, you're looking down a little bit. But here, total opposite. Like I'm looking up 7 footers, guys could probably jump over me if they wanted to. It's incredible. But to go back to your point, like these guys are massive, and the amount of work it takes for them to like execute a squat or a lunge, there's their levers are so long. Like we also have to keep that in mind too. Like there's a lot of adjustments that are made on the fly for proper execution because these guys are working so long, to execute something that would be considered, predominantly simple.
Correct. Yeah, that's how I feel too. Is just like I said, we have some 7 footers in house, and I'm just like, even watching him just do like a dumbbell overhead press, I'm like, that dumbbell is traveling so far. And then
Right.
when you're at the top, like the distance between your head to the dumbbell is so long that like the amount that's just putting on the shoulder. And then you're like, in your mind, you're like, yeah, it's only a 20-pound dumbbell. It's not really that hard to press overhead. But then you're like, when you look at the guy and you're like, the amount of work he has to do to push that 20-pound dumbbell over his head, you're like, okay, I get it. I have to make adjustments in my
Right.
thinking. And a lot of it is just we've been in baseball and we've been around the same body type so long that like, we could do that in our sleep. And then it's just
Right.
throwing you a curveball that you're not used to. And, in
Right.
10 years, if you're still in the NBA or you're still around with basketball guys, like it'd probably be second nature to you, right? You just learn along the way. But it's
Right.
definitely shocking when you first get that group. And like you said, for me, the smallest guy in our group is like 6'5". And I'm like, even
Right.
that, I'm like still looking up to this. I'm like, goodness gracious. I have one guy, he's a point guard, and he's like, yeah, I'm 6'2". And I'm like, no, you're not. And then like we stand next to each other, and I'm like, oh wait, you are. I'm like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
look small compared to the rest of the guys, but also like you're still a pretty big human. So it's very eye-opening. And then like I said, when you go to a game and then you have 10 of those guys compressed into a half of a court, offense versus defense, it really puts into perspective like how physical and how demanding the game is on those guys.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I've had the conversation that like baseball is not really a very intense game. It's just you do it every day, and that's really what wears you down versus like a hockey or a football or a basketball where it's like way more intense. You just don't play as frequently as like which is more demanding on the body. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always an interesting back and forth because we have athletes from, every sport in house, and everybody
Right.
likes to say that their sport is the hardest or the most demanding or the most
Right.
physical or whatever. So,
Yeah.
how about for you individually, just some of the challenges or like biggest areas of growth or learning, having been in baseball so long and now stepping into this new environment?
Yeah, I mean, right away, just understand because like, I didn't play basketball like officially. Like, you play street ball, you street hoop, things like that. So like you get like a very basic understanding of basketball, but like I, unless you've played like organized basketball where there's like structure and like understanding positions and what each position does, you're kind of walking into like a very unique and a very new space. And that's part of why, I made the move from professional baseball to the NBA was to like just kind of challenge myself a little bit, right? Personal growth, you know, get under something different, see things from a different lens and just really just understand a different type of athlete. So, walking in there was a huge learning curve for me, just understanding like how do they train? What do assessments look like? What's a game day look like? What types of workloads can we expect, from just the game environment of the NBA. So, stringing through a fire hose, very early on. But again, like I said before, like surrounded by a very supportive and, all-encompassing group that, kind of like dosed me appropriately from a leadership standpoint to get to understand and know the game. And yeah, so I would just say like right away it was just a big learning curve and understanding the NBA way and ultimately just basketball in itself.
And then you've mentioned the support staff around you a couple times. What's the layout look like of a medical group? Is it similar to baseball, like two strength coaches, a handful of PTs, ATs, or is it a little bit different for you guys?
Very, very similar. And I think that it's organization based. Um, I think we have a two-tier model of leadership. So we have like a senior director of high performance, and then we also have a senior director of medical. And then it tiers down from there. So like for me, it's like head strength coach, assistant strength coach, G League strength coach, right? Medical, you can have a series of, three PTs, three athletic trainers. So it's a little bit more robust on that end. I do think we're trying to iron things out to where we can kind of like level the playing field there. But, again, it just kind of goes back to the point of like, I think as long as guys are recovering, hydrating, taking care of their nutrition, you know, and just doing the very basics in the weight room, I think you can go a long way. Especially with, even if the staff from a medical and performance, stance is lopsided, you can still get away with it just because I do think, you know, just basics are enough.
You find yourself giving a little bit more one-on-one time versus like smaller groups. I just ask because like the roster seems to be smaller in basketball versus baseball.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of group guys into like pods, or case management systems. So with a roster of, anywhere between 14 to 16, it's divvied up between strength coaches, PTs, and athletic trainers. So each group of, six or seven players, will have their very own PT that they go to, AT that they go to, and then strength coach, right? And then you kind of manage, that group kind of manages within like interconnectedly with those group of players.
Okay. Yeah, that was something I was just curious about is I've heard that a lot of guys in the NBA have their own coach, like their own skill coach. And I was just wondering, like, medical side, how you guys divvied it up. So I would imagine it allows for like better relationships for you guys as well.
Yeah, and I think it just makes communication easier, when you just have like your group of individuals that, address said player. It just makes the channel of communication instead of like having to send something out like in the like entire group wide, you can really just harness on like the three, and then obviously if it's a little, upscale, if there's a more, you know, if there's a greater issue, then you can get the entire health and performance group involved. But I think just from like a day-to-day, management system, it's just like these three people are responsible for, these players.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. What are you doing during the game?
I'm actually fortunate enough to be on the bench, man. So
Cool.
I'm right there. Yeah, not every organization, to my understanding, allows strength coaches to be on the bench. I was blessed and fortunate enough to be someone who can kind of serve and provide on the bench. So, you know, timeouts happen. I'm able to go out there, keep guys moving, and I think that's a part of that, that group, that collaborative effort where, hey, can we make sure so and so gets a little bit of this, during, timeouts or rotations, so it's very cool to be out there and kind of watch the game live, but also be an important piece to keeping guys going throughout the game.
For sure. Is there anything that we missed in this comparison of NBA versus MLB before we move on to the next questions?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about in terms of kind of like the work capacity in game. I feel like in baseball it's very performance driven. So like if a guy's hot, his workload is going to go through the roof because he's doing so much more. Or if a pitcher, if he's on, he's gonna throw 90 to 100 pitches and his workload is going to be a lot higher. Whereas in basketball, it's like whether you're scoring or not, you're running up and down the court. Whether you're defending, you're on offense, like yeah, you're gonna get that stimulus regardless on either side of the ball, regardless of what type of performance output you have. So
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about. Like, I can remember back in the baseball days, like you keep track of 90s and all of that and times and everything. It's like if a guy goes 0 for 5 with 4 punchies and like a ground out, like he doesn't really run that much. And if that happens for a couple of days, you're like, you got to get a little more running
right,
volume.
right,
Where basketball, if you go 0 for 10 from the 3-point line, you're still running a whole bunch that game
right.
regardless.
No doubt.
Um, let's just shift a little bit here, not much, but just a little bit. What do you believe makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? And then is it different in the basketball space versus the baseball space?
I would say, again, hammering the basics, being very good at the basics, and just being able to coach the basics very, very well. But I'd say prior to understanding the X's and O's, there's a human aspect that needs to be understood and adhered to when it comes to players. I always tell myself like get to know get to know the player outside of the athlete first. Get to know him or he or she as an individual. Like define who they are as a human being first, and that'll ultimately help you drive the athlete that's inside of them. So I do think there's a level of humility that goes a long way with driving performance initiatives. Just understanding, you know, who athletes are as individuals can go a long way, in being successful as a strength coach.
Yeah, and that kind of transcends sport, right? That doesn't
Right.
really matter what setting you're in, college, high
No.
school, pro, basketball, football, baseball. Like
Nope.
at the end of the day, everybody is human first,
Right.
athlete second, and being able to touch on that, I think, is really valuable for sure.
100%.
How about advice for others? We kind of touched on it early on,
Yeah.
when we were talking about your journey, but is there anything else that you would advise either young coaches looking to get in or older coaches that maybe want to make a shift to a different sport or just
Yeah.
really anybody in general?
Yeah. Be curious. And I think curiosity will lead you to growth opportunities. And I think that's what happened for myself. Um, you know, just being curious as to what something else looks like or how to go about understanding a different sport is has led me to this opportunity. Um, you know, network, get to know people because you never know, like that individual may receive your resume one day. You never know. Always have a plan B ready. And then, surround yourself with, I know it's cliche, but surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are. I can honestly say that, in my job here in the NBA, I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by very intelligent individuals that I learn from almost daily. And I'm better for that. So really, surround yourself with people that can make you better.
Yeah, I can echo all of that, man. Since I left baseball, I'm in a new environment. I mean, I'm still working with baseball, but there's so many other sports that come through. And the coaches that are there have been there longer than I have. And even if I was there the same amount of time as them, they're all so smart and they're all so good at what they do that, like, for me, one, going into a new environment that I don't know how it works. and two, being surrounded by really good coaches and really good people has been so beneficial for me. And I feel like there are days where I'm in like this beginner mindset where I'm like, I don't know anything. And
Right.
sometimes it's really crushing. I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And then some
Right.
days I'm just like, you know what? You're right. You don't know anything. It's okay. Go in and learn. And I think those days, like that mindset has really helped me to just the biggest thing, like I said, just staying curious, being curious. Like I see something that someone else is doing and I want to know why because I think it's really good. And obviously they think it is too. So it's just, there are times where you step into that new environment and you've been doing things for a long time a certain way that, sometimes it's a little crushing. There are definitely days where I question if I've done everything wrong in my career and I'm like,
Right. Right.
goodness, I'm not very good at this. But most of the time it's like a more like, hey, I'm really curious and I get an opportunity to learn today. We had a bull riding team in the other day. Like I would have never thought that I was going
Right.
to operate with a bull riding team in some capacity when I was in baseball, but they come in and it's a totally different athlete. And it's like, all right, now I have to kind of work through this puzzle. And for me, it's been really rejuvenating is probably the right word that I would use, and refreshing to just have that beginner mindset again and be able to learn a whole new set of skills that if I were to go back to baseball someday, I would only be a better coach because of the opportunity I have to learn all these new things.
100%, man. And I can echo that sentiment. I feel like if I were to step back onto the diamond, um, I'm going to be so much better of a strength coach on so many different levels just because I understand a different sport. And you can take little nuggets from learning a different sport that could be applicable to baseball. So, um, you know, whether that opportunity presents itself one day or not, TBD. But if it does, man, yeah, I think it definitely sharpened the tool set for sure.
I would agree with you. Continuing education resources, where are you going? Books you'd recommend, seminars you attend, podcasts you
Yep.
listen to.
Yep.
You're part of the NBSCA now, right? So there's a
Correct.
whole new group of people to learn from. So
Yeah.
where are you going?
Man, so I just got back from the Sportsmith conference at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. Awesome. I think Rob Pacey put on a really good just educational platform once again. They never disappoint. Um, I still am closing in on finishing my PhD at Concordia University, Chicago. I aim to start my dissertation this August. So just looking to close that chapter, man. So exciting times. I would say a couple books to read that have kind of stood out to me along the way. I would say the Almanac of a Navy Ravikant by Eric Jorgensen. I would say Start with Why, Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek and Adam Gant, they always do a really good job of kind of putting out growth content. So any of those authors, tap in for sure. And then, one of the better podcasts I listen to on my way to work, since I do have a pretty good commute in the morning. The High Performance Podcast, really cool. And then obviously, the Pacey podcast, are pretty solid ones. So
I want to get you out of here because we've been at it for over an hour, and
yeah,
I
no,
know
we're
you
good.
value family time. You get the little
You're
guy,
good,
but
man.
I have four questions for a lightning round, and then I'll get you out of here. You cool with
All right,
that?
let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, buddy. What is your favorite road trip to make, and is it different in basketball versus baseball?
Oddly, no. I still love going to New York, whether it's for baseball or basketball.
Is it as good in basketball as it is in baseball?
Oof. Depends on what you're looking for.
Okay. The
Yeah.
the
But
baseball trip is really good.
the baseball trip's really good. Um, it just depends on what type of fan. If you're more into baseball, like New York is going to be a blast. Just how they do things. And then basketball, there's just so much history tied into Madison Square Garden. Like it's incredible, man. Yeah.
We talked about travel earlier. So, what is one thing you do to help alleviate some of the stress of bad travel in season?
Quiet time. Just quiet time. Just sometimes just turn all the lights off and just kind of because everything around us is so noisy in professional sports. Just tuning it out, man, for a while does you a ton of good from a mental and physical standpoint.
Has your philosophy on how to train athletes changed now that you've worked in multiple professional leagues?
I would just going back to early on, just being very rah rah. Along the way, you're gonna learn that simple is key. Simple works, simple drives results.
Would you rather make it to the top as a professional baseball player or basketball player, having seen like how athletes operate, how they get
Yeah.
fed, how they get treated? Like, which would you rather be a pro athlete in?
I'll take like on field, like just performance wise, I'll take the baseball player, but I'll definitely take NBA basketball player money for sure.
Okay, that's fair. It's been great to catch up, man. Professionally, obviously, I'm really happy for you, and I'm really glad you're doing well. But also, personally, as a friend, we've been doing
Yeah,
this for a long time, and it's
of
great
course.
to just follow your journey and catch up anytime we can. So, if the listeners want to get in touch, if they want to talk baseball, basketball, life, where can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, man. I try not to do too much social media now that I'm a father. I try to, like I said before, just be where my feet are at home. But you can always hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do Facebook. I don't really do Instagram. But yeah, LinkedIn is where you can find me at if you want to send me a message or get in touch and connect at some point.
Good for you, buddy. I appreciate that. It's something that more people should probably take account of themselves for. But I appreciate your time. It's been great to catch up, and we'll definitely talk soon, my friend.
Awesome, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate you, Chris.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 3 of this 3-part interview with Goldy. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you were able to tune into the other parts as well. We covered a lot of stuff over the course of this whole interview, so be sure to check in on parts 1 and 2 if you haven't already. And then obviously appreciate you listening in here for part 3. But 3 things that I took from Goldy in this episode. All athletes can benefit from training the total body, regardless of the emphasis of their sport. When stepping into a new environment, accepting that there will be a learning curve and embracing the challenges with an open mind can help you to be successful. And surround yourself with people that can make you better. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.